Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy Keith the Guy, and we got some fish to fry. And today we have another episode of color grading on our iPad Pro. And we're gonna go ahead and grade this footage. Now, we kind of have a blank slate here. I went ahead and imported the media, but that's pretty much the only thing that I've done. So what I'm going to do next is set up my project. So I'm going to go ahead and create some new notes. Now, if you guys don't know how to do any of this, you can go ahead and look at my old videos that kind of show you step by step on the hotkeys and what to press in order to do that. I'm currently using a keyboard along with my Apple Pencil. Now, for those who are just using your straight fingers, it's going to be some of these buttons laying around. I'm going to need approximately 8 to 7 notes for sure. So I'm just going to create 7 right now, and I'm going to go ahead and name them. And we're going to be utilizing what you see on the screen right now, which is the color checker. And the reason why we use the color checker is because you're not looking at the right colors when you're color grading on your iPad because it's not calibrated. So utilizing a color checker definitely helps you know that you're touching and messing with the right colors. So I recommend and suggest that you go ahead and get a color checker. And if you want to know what it is, I'm going to zoom in. It's this little doohickey right here. Now that we name our nodes, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to click on the cog wheel to go into the settings. I'm going to go into color manage. We're going to change this to DaVinci RGB color manage. We're going to turn off the automatic. We're going to go down to custom. And then I'm utilizing my Canon R5 and C-Log 3. Now, whatever camera you're using, go ahead and use the specs that coordinate with that camera. So we're going to go ahead and change our input color space to Canon Log 3. Our timeline color space is going to be DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. And then we're going to actually use a custom working luminance, and we're going to bring that all the way up to 10G. We're going to use Rec 709 Gamma 2.4, and then we're going to change our limit to output's color space. Our input is going to be none. And then we're going to do luminance mapping, and we're going to go ahead and press save. And to be honest with you, it's probably as good as gold now, but we're going to actually tweak it a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is actually go utilize our waveform, and we're going to adjust our exposures first. So we're going to zoom in, and then we're going to use one of these tiles, these gray tiles, which is going to be the middle gray, to figure out what our exposure needs to be. So we're going to isolate that using a power window. So it's going to be this middle gray chip here. And then we're going to adjust our waveform so we could see where that middle chip is. And it looks like it's actually hitting that 50 perfectly, but I'm still going to tweak it a little bit. And we're actually going to utilize our HDR and bring up our exposure ever so slightly. If I move it down, you see that little white line moving, but we're going to actually bring it up a notch to like 0.03. And that's all we're really going to do for our exposure. We're going to cut it off. We're going to cut off our isolation by turning off our power window. And then we're going to move on to our white balance. And we're going to do a similar thing using the color checker, but instead, we're actually going to go to the vector scope and isolate that middle gray chip again. And what we're going to do is we're going to adjust our vector scope a little bit, turn down the gradical so we don't see that too much, bring up the vector scope. And then you see that little white dot. We're going to go ahead and actually go into our primary color wheels, and we're going to go into the offset. We're going to move that dot to the very center. Right there. And to be honest with you, this is going to be super tough if you're not using an Apple Pencil. Just giving you a heads up. Okay. Now that we did that, we got our exposure and our white balance set. We're going to turn off our window. We're going to move on to the contrast. We're going to zoom out, and we're going to kind of zoom in and put our focus and attention on her face. And we're going to go into the curves tab. We're going to create a slight S curve. We're going to change our vector scope into our waveform to make sure we're utilizing the right things. And we're just going to actually start off utilizing the middle section So we could add a little bit of contrast, separation, and we're going to create a little S-curve, nothing too serious. I'm kind of liking it so far. We could tweak it back if we need to. I'm actually gonna bring up these blacks a little bit. I feel like it's too crushed. Now we're going to move on to our corrections, and we're going to actually now correct our colors. So what we're gonna do, so now that we're in our curves, we're gonna do hue versus hue. We're gonna switch from waveform over to vector scope, and we're gonna zoom back in to this palette, and we're going to mess around with this top row where you see all the different hues and colors, and we're gonna isolate that. We're gonna bring up the gradical a little bit. We're gonna do the 2x zoom. And now we're gonna play a little game, which is fit this spidery hand into these squares. So we're going to start with our red. Our red seems to be perfectly in its square. So we're gonna move on to our yellow. And then the hue is going to adjust it left to right. And the saturation is going to adjust the in and out. So we're kind of good on the hues. The only thing we need to adjust here is our magentas. And then we're going to move on to hue versus saturation. And then we're going to try to go up and down to get these colors perfectly into their square. And now we have a color corrected image. Now we're going to go ahead and color grade. Now I did more with the lighting here. So what I'm gonna do is go on to my next shot that has these colors in the background. So I'm gonna go on my clips and I'm gonna copy and paste what happened here onto here. We're gonna turn off the node real quick so we can have more real estate and we know what we're messing with. And we're gonna zoom in. The primary focus is her face. So we're gonna go over to the slice tab. If you look at this line right here on the vector scope, you wanna align someone's skin. So if we press this tab here on that line, and if you know you're hitting that line, that means you got the proper skin tones. I want to add saturation to the whole thing. It seems a little undersaturated for me, and I'm gonna bring the saturation up by like, nope, too serious. So I'm actually gonna dial in the number, probably like 105. I could add a little bit more to it, 106. I want to add some more intensity to that green. Right, make that dress pop out a little bit. And then we're going to bring that hue a little bit more to the green. And we're going to zoom out a little bit, see what we're dealing with. I know there's some cyan in that dress as well too. So I'm gonna actually dial back the cyan so I can get a darker green out of that dress. And then I'm gonna actually adjust a little bit of the magenta. And then, of course, it's always good to see it before and after too, to see if you took it too far. I'm gonna turn it off and then turn it on. Now that dress is looking far more deeper, and that's the look I'm looking for. It was looking real washed out before I was messing with the slice. And I'm actually going to decide to mess around with this a little bit. Make her skin a little bit more rich and dark, like right there. All right, and then we're going to go to our second to our last tab. We're gonna fix that green a little bit. That green is just coming in a little too strong, even though it's like the main entree right next to her, but it's just coming in a little too strong. Like, we're gonna actually go into the luminance versus the hue, and we're actually going to dial down that luminance gain a little bit, make it a little bit more darker. Okay, like right there. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to slightly sharpen it, because 1 point means a lot here. If I can just get it at 0.49, I'm gonna type it in. There you go. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create another node, and then we're going to create another power window circle. And to make sure we are moving it in the direction where the light's at, I know the light's right there, and we're going to create a very very feathered out and somewhat big vignette. As a matter of fact, we had a in and out it, and then we're going to bring down the gamma. The sweet spot usually is -0.5, and we're going to turn it on. We're going to turn it off and then turn it on. And as you can see, the eyes are primarily focused on her, and there's her vignette. And that's basically it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this tutorial on the iPad on how to color grade your footage. As I mentioned, I highly recommend that you guys get a color checker if you're going to be color grading on your iPad, so you know you're getting accurate footage when you're implementing it into your iPad, only because you know the screen's not color calibrated. But hopefully this video was beneficial, and if it was, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Deuces.